once again, David Sirota has written a great article, okay? And at the end of all of this, and yes, the Republicans got crushed politically. Yes, they've damaged their brand tremendously, and it seems that they now stand for extremism. Yes, I think that they stand an excellent chance of actually losing the House in 2014. I understand all of that. But when it comes to policy, David Sirota is right again. It turns out that they have moved the spectrum so far right that progressives are not even really considered in the equation. First of all, a really telling quote that David brought up is from the New York Times. They had an article about this, and they quoted Joe Echeverria, who's the chief executive of Deloitte. That's an accounting and consulting firm. So this is one of the corporate guys. And he says, look, I'm a diehard Republican. I'm a registered Republican. I've been a Republican the whole time, and I define myself as a Republican. But these Tea Party guys are extreme, and they have real power. And then he has this telling quote. He says, the extreme right has 90 seats in the House. Occupy Wall Street has no seats. So isn't that amazing? Because if you look at the polls, the country totally agrees with Occupy Wall Street that the banks have been too deregulated. They've gotten away with historic fraud. They agree with Wall Street that tax cuts are extreme now and that we need to actually increase taxes on the rich. They agree with Occupy Wall Street on so many core issues. 0 seats in the House, 0 seats in the Senate. The Tea Party now has an approval rating of 21%, 90 seats in the House. Why? Because the spectrum has shifted, because all the money flows to the right. And then he explains it perfectly in this quote. He says, in this new arena, the Democratic Party is the far left edge of the political spectrum, despite it being, by recent historical comparisons, an economically conservative party reminiscent of the GOP 10 or 20 years ago. Let me pause there for a second. Look, this is what I say all the time, because I was a Republican 10 to 20 years ago. And yes, this Democratic Party is not just reminiscent of that GOP party. I was a liberal Republican from the Northeast, socially liberal and economically conservative, right? Back then in that spectrum. Now, I'm pretty much where I was, certainly on economic issues and fiscal issues. The Democratic Party went from way to the left of me to significantly to the right of me. I'm now considered this like fire-breathing progressive or something, right? So, yes, the Democratic Party is now center-right, especially when it comes to economic issues. And David continues, at the same time, the new mainstream right is the Tea Party extremism. Meanwhile, the supposedly sensible center is what you might call Chamber of Commerce conservatism, aka the reliably conservative agenda of corporate America. And there you have it. That's exactly the good cop, bad cop that was just played on us. Oh, the good cops are the corporations that support the Democratic Party and the Republican establishment. The bad cops are those crazy extreme Tea Party guys. Oh, I can't believe you pulled us further and further right. Oh, no, golly gee. Oh, look at that. Before the negotiations even really began in earnest, before the shutdown began, the Democrats had already given an extra $70 billion away. And now the plan that's being put into effect today is actually to the right of Paul Ryan's original extremely right plan. It cut more in spending than Paul Ryan's original plan did. Look at how far the spectrum has moved to the right. And the sequester, which the Democrats were originally upset about, and all the cuts in spending that the sequester had, is now the new normal. So corporations love the redistribution of wealth to them. And that's what the Republican Party is about. Unfortunately, that's what a large part of the Democratic Party has become about. So we play this soap opera between the extreme Tea Party guys and what is now being disguised as the sensible center, even though it does not match what the American people say in the polls at all as to what their real intentions are. And in the end, we have right-wing policy, pro-corporate policy that cuts spending for the average American and that can't wait to cut spending on what they call our entitlements, the Social Security and Medicare we paid into. So that's the shell game that just got played on us. So if you're a progressive, don't rejoice too much in the Republican defeat. Yes, it matters in politics, and we hope that politics might matter in policy later. But for the moment being, they're still having their way with us in terms of policy. That's disturbing, but it's reality.